Dear friends, this Shabbat we'll be reading the Torah portion of Shoftim. We're getting towards the end of the entire Torah reading. We're middle of Moshe Rabbeinu's speech, final talk to the Jewish people, his last will and testament, really giving over God's word, but a summary of everything that happened in the last 40 years in the desert and getting them ready to go into the land of Israel. And here Moshe tells us, as one of the mitzvahs that are first introduced in the 5th book of Deuteronomy, of Devarim, tells us about appointing a king. And one of the things that he tells us about a king is really limitations that a king has. Though a king is all powerful, and a king, even in Torah law, has the ability to do things that the average person cannot do, yet they have limitations. They can't marry more than a certain amount of women. This is when biblically you're allowed to marry more than one wife. They cannot even have too many horses, etc., etc. And one of the mitzvahs that a king has that's very fascinating is that a king has to have 2 Torahs. So every single Jew, and we're told this later on, has to write their own Torah. We have to have a Torah. The idea of this is 2 things. Number one is every Jew is included in the Torah. The Torah represents, through 600,000 letters and different symbols, it has 600,000 symbols and letters representing the 600,000 Jews. So every Jew is a part of the Torah. But also you need to have the Torah to know how to live as a Jew. So every Jew has a mitzvah to write the Torah. Today, it's not possible. It's very expensive. Most people cannot afford it. So there are other ways of fulfilling this mitzvah, but this is not what the topic of discussion today is. But a king is not enough for them to have the one Torah that every Jew has. They have to have a second Torah. One Torah they keep back in their palace, in their home, and one that goes with them wherever they go. That Torah goes with them. It could be a small Torah, but that Torah goes with them and travels with the king wherever they are. Why does the king need to have the Torah? Most kings that we had in our history were quite knowledgeable. They were great judges and rabbis. So why do they need the Torah more than other people? And the answer is that the king is a leader. And as a leader, everyone is following them. Wherever they go, every move they make is a message of what the Torah says about how we have to live, how we have to conduct ourselves. And the Torah tells us that when you go out into the world and you're doing your mission and you're fulfilling your duties and your obligations, you must remember at all times that it must be guided by the Torah. It must follow the ways that God had laid out for us. No matter how talented and able we are, the Torah is our ultimate guide. No matter if you're a king or if you're a simple person, the Torah is our ultimate guide. And a king needs that reminder more than anyone else. They carry it with them wherever they go. Because as a person of power and position, you think that you can change the laws, you can amend the laws, you can have an impact on how the laws will be executed. And the Torah says no. It applies to you like everyone else equally. You have to follow in the ways of the Torah. It's very important that every Jew get this message. And really this message is for all of us, because we live in a world today, we're all kings in our own little kingdom. We go out into the world, whether we're a boss in a company or whether we're an employee. It doesn't make a difference. We are controlling our lives, we're controlling our interactions with the people around us. We are in control of our movements and what happens. And the Torah says that you got to carry the Torah wherever you go. It's not enough that it sits in your home and you remember who you are when you're home, or sitting in your safety deposit box where you're always sure to know where your treasures are. Torah is something that has to go with you wherever you are. It has to carry you. It has to guide you. And ultimately, when it does guide you, it does carry you. It carries those who follow it. It makes life not just simpler, it makes life clearer. It helps you accomplish a lot more because you have much less confusion, a much more clarity of where and when you have to be and direction you should be going. So we all have to have 2 Torahs. There's the Torah the way it is at home, and there we're in our full glory. There our life is only about Judaism, about Torah, about godliness. But even when we're in the street and we're partaking of the regular mundane things. We're working, we're out there interacting with people. So Torah seems like to take to fall into the background. So it says, no, carry the Torah wherever you are. Even when you're doing your regular mundane, normal activities, it should be clearly seen by all those who interact with you that this is a person who is led by Torah, this is a person who is guided by the ways of the Torah in your life. And this week, when I was traveling, I was in Nanaimo, BC, a small town in British Columbia. There's a beautiful young couple with their 5 children who are the shluchim there. The oldest child is 9. And they were so excitedly telling me, the shliach and his wife, how they're getting their first Torah. This is a place where they're the only Jewish address in town. Nothing exists besides them. Except the Jews who they are reaching out to. And they're getting their first Torah. Till now they had a borrowed Torah. And the excitement. And then the children, 9 and 7-year-old boys, were telling me how 2 years ago they went to the Ohel, to the Rebbe's gravesite and the Rebbe's yahrzeit. And these are young kids, but yet they see what's going on. They're part of what's happening, and they see the Chabadas in their home. And they have a Torah that's borrowed from someone, doesn't belong to them, could be called back at any time. And when they went to the Rebbe, they both prayed, Rebbe, please bring a Torah to our Chabad house. And within a year, the next year, Gimel Tammuz, they were called. The shliach was called by a person in the community. It's a long story how it happened, but it's a fascinating story. And he said, we want to donate a Torah to your synagogue. We want the Nanaimo to have its first own Torah. The excitement of having their own Torah. This is the excitement we have to have, all of us. That the Torah we carry with us is not just to remind us of the law so we don't err and get punishment. No, it's far from that. The Torah is our light. The Torah is our strength. The Torah is our guidance. Carry the Torah wherever you are. Carry the symbol of Torah. Today on our smartphones, you can have the Siddur, the Tehillim, you can have the Torah in your smartphone. Carry it wherever you go. Open it up. Take a look. Listen to a podcast while you're taking a jog or running. Carry the Torah wherever you are. Because when you carry the Torah carries you. I want to wish you Shabbat Shalom. May God bless you. We love you all. Shabbat candlelighting time in Montreal, 7:46 p.m.